story on CNBC TV 18. The goods and services tax is closer than ever before. The bill will be tabled in the Rajya Sabha on Wednesday. Sources say the government will make 4 to 5 crucial amendments to the Constitutional Amendment Bill. Not just that, the centre and the states could agree to a change as far as the dual control threshold is concerned. Ritu Parnabhuyan and Sapna Das join us now with the details. Ritu, coming to you first, what are the changes that we can expect in the Constitutional Amendment Bill? And, you know, the Congress party is doing a big rally tomorrow in Uttar Pradesh, which is why now the bill is being taken up on Wednesday.
We have been told by sources that at least 4 to 5 amendments will be moved by the government, but the most important amongst them is a broad guiding principle based on which the GST rate will be decided. Remember that the State Council of Finance Ministers had decided on this particular principle, which basically said that the common man should not be impacted by a high GST rate, and at the same time the state should not, the state revenue collection should not be impacted. So this broad principle, we understand, will find a way into the GST Constitutional Amendment Bill. There will be some clause, outlining this particular principle, and in addition to that, there will be amendments which basically does away with the 1% additional tax. There will be more clear language on the 5% compensation, the 5-year compensation mechanism, and of course we'll also see some more power being given to states as far as the GST Council is concerned for the purpose of dealing with disputes. In addition to that, we also saw a lot of development today in terms of negotiations. Congress party top leaders met Finance Minister and requested for introduction of the GST Constitutional Amendment Bill only on Wednesday, because tomorrow there is an important Congress rally. This was immediately agreed to. Sitaram Yeshwari, on behalf of left parties, also met the Finance Minister, and we understand that even left parties have expressed support for the GST Constitutional Amendment Bill. So net support coming from almost all quarters in Rajya Sabha, and it remains to be seen what happens on Wednesday. Of course, some of these opposition parties will be moving amendments, but the indication is that almost all parties in Rajya Sabha will be voting for this important legislation. With that, it's back to you.
Oh yes, Wednesday will be the big day, Ritu. But Sapna, coming into you now, a major change could be underway as far as the dual control threshold is concerned. What are you picking up? Government seems to have given in to the demand from the states then.
We understand there has been some headway in terms of the dual control issue, possibly the annual threshold of 1.5 crores, which the states had been talking about, that there should not be any dual control up to that number may get knocked down. So the new number may settle around 50 to 75 lakhs. Of course, there's no confirmation on this number so far, but this is something that will be woven into the GST Act, and if that is so, well, then that is progress on that front. At least the threshold will be lower. That will be comfort for centre, and the states will have to yield that much more in terms of administrative powers. This has been a sticking issue for quite some time. That is one. The second, in terms of the possible revenue loss of around 30,000 crores after the first year rollout of GST, these are indications, estimates given by senior finance ministry officials. We have to wait and watch and see how things develop on that front. They're also indicating very clearly that 4 rates will remain within GST, a lower rate for gold, a concessional rate which may settle around 12%, a standard rate which may settle around 18%, and a higher rate of 40% for some luxury items and sin goods. Now, we do know that there are certain recommendations of the CA panel which are already in public domain. Possibly some of these numbers are based on those estimates. We have to just keep an eye and keep, just watch how things develop on that front.
Well, that is right. We're going to be tracking all of those developments. Sapna and Ritu, thanks very much for joining us. To take this conversation further, we'll be joined by Congress spokesperson and senior leader Abhishek Manu Singhvi. Also joining us now is Saloni Roy of Deloitte. Saloni, appreciate you joining us here. So it looks like we are now one step closer to the Constitutional Amendment Bill being tabled and passed in the Rajya Sabha. Crucial amendments likely to be moved to try and placate the opposition leaders. What do you make of the changes that are being proposed, and do you believe that we're now closer to a better GST?
Yes, clearly it is a more purer form of GST that that is being proposed, especially with the dropping of the 1%. That itself was an aberration, and I'm glad that has been dropped. So that's definitely a good move, and it also is positive to get consensus from the opposition parties so that passage of the bill is not such a problem.
Right. Saloni, in terms of clarifications or clarity, what more would you like to see from the government? Because this is just the first step. The crucial issues where negotiations will continue around the rates, etc., that will be taken up as part of the GST bill, which will be addressed later. But at this point in time, on the basis of the constitutional amendment bill, what are the clarifications, if any, that you would like to see?
I think the bill is fairly good to go. I think the areas which really need clarification will be on the law, because the model law that has been released requires a considerable amount of work. There are several concerns because the model law seems to suggest that credits, issues relating to valuation will all be issues which will continue and perpetuate in a GST environment, which we were hoping would be easier and simpler in a GST, and that's why we were looking at moving to GST. Those were the reasons why we were looking to a GST environment. Now, in terms of rates, it's difficult to actually have rates specifically bound by in the Constitution, as you can see how difficult it is to get this current constitutional amendment passed. So if there was a rate which was within the Constitution for GST, it would be equally difficult to change rates. Typically, rates are not decided in the Constitution. They're typically in the law itself. So hopefully, there will be some discussion around that and some acceptance by, stakeholders that rates may not necessarily be in the constitutional bill itself. It could be agreed amongst the GST Council, which will actually be a representative forum of all the state governments, and it will be through the GST Council that rates will be decided and amended.
That's right. Let's go across now to Abhishek Manu Singhvi, spokesperson for the Congress Party. Mr. Singhvi, we appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. There was a meeting between the government and Congress Party leaders today. The finance minister seems to suggest the meeting was successful. Are we given to understand now that the Congress will support the GST bill in the Rajya Sabha?
Well, I think continuing with the notion that no news is generally good news, let me point out 4 or 5 things. Certainly there has been a movement. Certainly there has been a convergence. The very fact that a constitution amendment bill will come up day after tomorrow is itself indicative of the significant movement. Having said that, we all understand that the devil, both God and the devil, lie in the details. A large part of such a comprehensive regulatory scheme will have to be worked out in the Act, and let me make it clear that the Act has a large number of states yet to come on board. There are differing states of different viewpoints, and that is where the government still has to work. But that is for later, and I think the 2-part division will make it work with the time available in between for negotiations. As far as the constitutional structure is concerned, it gives a great impetus to the whole thing. It creates a constitutional structure. It becomes a vital declaration of intent because it is found in the highest document of the land, the Constitution of India, that we are having a GST. It makes it inviolable. It makes the momentum and the direction much quicker for the Act to come into place. So I think it's a good thing. And the nitty-gritty and the details will have to be still worked out. Now, why the Act? Even beyond the Act into the rules. So I think between this session and the next
but
one,
let's cross each bridge as we get to it, Mr. Singhvi. So can I get a straightforward answer, sir? Will the Congress now support the GST bill? Is it a done deal now as far as the constitutional amendment bill itself is concerned?
As far as the constitutional level is concerned, my answer is almost yes, except that I don't want to see any nasty surprises in the text which will come only day after tomorrow. So the answer is a very frank one, but obviously it depends on the government that they will give the Constitutional Act a bill which is more or less a bare bones structural thing, and I see no particular problem.
In the meeting that the Congress had with the government today, I'm assuming that a lot of the details that you were hoping for, the clarifications that you were seeking from the government ought to have addressed those clarifications, which is why we're now seeing the Congress virtually come on board, as you said, almost yes, as far as the GST bill is concerned. What would you specifically be looking for, and what are the crucial amendments that the Congress may still move?
Well, I'm not at liberty to disclose to you the contents of the meeting, but the small caveat I put was only because I have not seen the formal text as brought up day after tomorrow. But I see no particular problem. 1%, as you've just now said in this program, is a good change. There is no other major breaking point at the constitutional level. So I do not see. I think the real issues are the ones which come to the second stage. And also what I think is a good move is that this pragmatism has been shown, that you take away the contentious issues from this constitutional level bill and put them into further negotiated package in the second one. So I think that's a good move. I don't see any particular problem.
All right, so that is the big headline that is coming in there from Abhishek Manu Singhvi, senior leader of the Congress Party and Congress Party spokesperson, saying that the Congress will support the Goods and Services Tax Constitutional Amendment Bill. Of course, several other issues require negotiation, but that will be addressed later as part of the law and as part of the rules. But Mr. Singhvi, if I could ask you a very quick question, whether some clarification or clarity has been provided by the government to the Congress Party on some sort of a resolution that we are given to understand that was arrived at the State Empowered Finance Ministers meeting. We are also given to understand that perhaps some sort of a guiding principle to arrive at the rate has been decided on in that resolution, and maybe it will be a part of the Constitutional Amendment Bill. Do you have any clarity on that?
Well, I think, first of all, you are inviting me almost to the verge of breach of privileges if I start discussing matters which are hotly parliamentary at the moment, and I don't intend to do that. Secondly, you cannot discuss confidential details of a meeting and yet the bill which has not seen the light of the day. But let me tell you one thing clearly. The very fact that you are having for the first time the Constitutional Amendment Bill being introduced, it is obvious to anybody who knows arithmetic that a Constitutional Amendment Bill would not be introduced in terms of for consideration, that is, introduced for consideration, had it not been a great degree of convergence. So let's leave it at that. Why get into the nitty-gritty? Because that's something which will have to be worked out on the floor of Parliament. But I feel very positive as far as the constitutional bill is concerned.
You're absolutely right on that front. That is, of course, the big story. Unless we had the government manage the support of the Congress Party, and of course all the other regional parties were already on board, they probably wouldn't have gone ahead with tabling the bill on Wednesday. So it seems like it is all clear now as far as the Constitutional Amendment Bill is concerned. Very quickly, Mr. Singhvi, what should we expect now as the next step?
That's the real one. You're absolutely right. You see, this is a joyous occasion because the structure is there, but it is by no means even half the journey. You see, there is a huge amount of detail to be worked out, and to be very honest, Shirin, you forget the Congress. There are states out there which have nothing to do with the Congress, which have very, very strong differences in the detailing, in the operational reality. For that matter, even if you take out issues which have been left out, you know, issues like alcohol and other things. So I think those are details which have to be still worked out, and below the act is a whole fasciculus of rules which we are ignoring. We all understand that big, you know, as Thomas Hardy said, take care of the small things, the big things will take care of themselves. Now the small things have still to be taken care of, and that is where I think the challenges of the government, which is very little to do with the Congress Party, but to do with many, many different perspectives of different states. And that, I think, should take minimum the time between now and the next session, and we'll be very happy and lucky if that gets through by the next session.
You're absolutely right. A lot of the contentious issues will now need to be addressed. The Constitutional Amendment Bill is only the first step. It's the first big step, though, and that's the Congress Party telling you on CNBC TV 18 that they will support the GST Bill. Mr. Singhvi, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Well, the